Hey guys, it's Sunday afternoon, and I'm in the hangar right now with 99725, the airplane that I was flying yesterday on a discovery flight. And it's in the hangar right now because there's some rain showers and thunderstorms coming, so all the airplanes are safely tucked in the hangar now. But I want to talk to you a little bit about that flight yesterday because it's been bugging me ever since I landed, and I want to tell you why. So it started out as a routine discovery flight. I was taking a young man who's going to be a senior in high school starting this week and one of his older friends for a flight that was purchased for the young man as a gift. And we did our pre-flight inspection, all my usual things that I do before a discovery flight. We took off, everything was fine. We departed on runway 5, which was the runway in use yesterday. And the weather was a bit like today, where, there's some clouds. Some of them are a little bit lower, maybe 2,000 feet, maybe a couple dangling a little lower with some storms to the west. And so the ATIS that was active at the time said that they were running the ILS to runway 32, circling to runway 5. Now, I did hear that, but looking to the south along the approach corridor to runway 32, it was definitely not IMC conditions, it was VFR. Two of my company airplanes departed VFR to the south ahead of me, as you'll see in the video recreation that I pulled off of ADSB Exchange. So thanks, guys, for that free service. I appreciate it. It's very helpful in me telling my story today. So I departed runway 5 immediately in trail of November 152 Delta Mike, which is our Cessna 152. Now, even though 725 over here isn't the fastest 172 on the planet, it's still faster than the 152. So I was cognizant of that as I took off behind him. Now, when I took off, the tower said, cleared me for an immediate departure, so i.e. no dilly-dallying on the runway. And it wasn't rushed, but I was definitely creeping up on 2 Delta Mike as we both flew the departure leg and then turned right to head toward the south. So he turned a little bit more to the right, and so I aimed a little bit to his left or to the east to make space so I wouldn't basically run him over. Not super nice to run over your employees in the pattern, right? So everything was cool. I departed. I'm climbing up to about 1,500 feet because there were some clouds again that were a bit lower. So I decided to stay at about 1,500, keeping 2 Delta Mike in sight off to my right. And I didn't have November 739 Zulu Whiskey in sight. They had departed prior to 152 Delta Mike, so they were well ahead of us. But as you'll see in the ADSB Exchange um, screenshot that I'll play for you here in a minute, they were sort of ahead of me off to the east, a little bit further out. So basically, all three of us were together departing to the southeast-ish.
At the top of the screen, you can see November 99725 with me at the controls, departing Craig Airport in trail behind November 739 Zulu Whiskey and November 152 Delta Mike. This was shortly before 2 p.m. on Saturday, August 9th. I've overlaid a portion of the Jacksonville VFR sectional for reference because the layout of our local airspace is important here. That's Craig Airport near the top.
So I'm chatting with my Discovery flight person, trying to get them to take the flight controls and get a little bit of experience because that's the whole point of a Discovery flight. Meanwhile, I have lots of things to do. I have to keep 2 Delta Mike in sight. I have to monitor the cloud clearance to make sure I'm maintaining VFR. I have to look for traffic inbound to Craig and keep an eye out for where I can land if this engine quits. There's lots of things going on, even on a quote simple routine VFR discovery flight. Plus, I'm managing the guy in the back seat, making sure he's not about to puke. So there's lots of things happening in the cockpit, even on a fairly routine, simple flight. So we get several miles south of Craig, and I see that 2 Delta Mike has now, proceeded a little bit more to the southwest of me. So I tell my guy who's flying to head toward the beach. So we turn a little bit more to the left. We start heading toward the beach. And as we get a little closer to the beach, I notice an airplane who turned out to be 739 Zulu Whiskey, although I couldn't tell that at the time. I didn't have my ADSB data up in front of me on my iPad. I just was looking at the traffic display in the airplane, which doesn't display tail numbers. So I couldn't tell who it was, but I definitely saw the airplane. And it looked like they were doing some maneuvers. And from reading the student notes after the fact, it turns out they were. This was a guy who's getting ready for his private pilot check ride. So he was practicing steep turns and a few other maneuvers over the beach up at about 3,000 feet. And out the window, I definitely knew that they were higher than us, but they kept turning toward us, making those turns, and it looked like he was descending. So again, I just wasn't super confident that they were going to stay put. So I decided the best course of action would be to head a little bit more toward the intercoastal, a little bit more now back toward the west or toward my right, which put me a teeny bit close to the localizer for runway 32. And here's where things got interesting.
There's probably a way to overlay airspace in ADSB Exchange, but I'm not a power user yet, so I just drew a red circle for you to see here approximately where I was when I switched my radio frequency from Craig Tower to Jack's Approach. That bright yellow line extending to the southeast represents roughly the position of the localizer, which is the final approach course to runway 32 at Craig.
I'll put a link in the description to this video, but about, I don't know, a couple months ago, I made a different video about the Jacksonville area airspace, highlighting some common issues that we see around here, given all the congestion that we have, and some tips for pilots and flight instructors to use to steer clear of one another and make ATC's life easier. And one of those things is don't fly over the localizer to runway 32 or for any of the other airports for that matter that have instrument approaches. So I know this. I'm the one that made the video. I've gone to the safety meetings. I've met with pilots from other flight schools. So I get it. But here I was out there trying to do, my job as pilot in command and not hit this person who I see out my left window. And I decided the best course of action would be to go a little bit to the right. Now, of course, when I went a little bit to the right, which was toward the localizer, I didn't see anybody there. I didn't see anybody on my traffic display. So in my mind, this was the best thing to do, to sneak a little bit over that way, give some space for this guy off to my left, and then keep making my way toward the beach where I would be out of everybody's way. And in the meantime, after I had cleared the Craig class Delta airspace, because in the class Delta, you're required to maintain two-way communication with the tower. So I was on their frequency. But a little bit after I exited the airspace, as you'll see in the video here, I switched over to Jacksonville Approach on frequency 124.9. Now, in my previous video on airspace, and what we always tell our staff and instructors and anybody who will listen, is that please do everybody a favor and monitor Jacksonville Approach whenever you're just diddling around out there. You don't have to talk to them and get flight following necessarily, but monitor their frequency, because if they need to get a hold of you for some reason, like to get you out of the way of somebody that they are talking to, thanks to the magic of ADSB, they will see your tail number on their radar display and they can key the mic and say, hey, Cessna 12345, are you on frequency? And then give them some suggestions as to what to do or directive to, avoid a traffic conflict. So yesterday, as I'm maneuvering out of 739 Zulu Whiskey's way and meandering toward the localizer and switching over to Jacksonville Approach, a few seconds after I did that, I hear 99725, are you on frequency? And I said yes. And I can't get the ATC audio to come up on liveatc.net. I wish I could, but the long and short of it is this controller starts letting into me really hard about, why are you on the localizer? You know you shouldn't be there. You're just creating problems for everybody. And after he finished his transmission, I said, yes, I'm aware of that, but I was avoiding traffic to my left. And this guy just keeps letting into me. You're just making everybody's life harder, blah, 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 blah. I'm paraphrasing here, but he was mad. And he let me know that he was mad. And I said, look, I'm sorry. Once again, I was trying to avoid a traffic conflict. And he says, your traffic now is, 2 miles at your 12 o'clock coming inbound on the ILS to 32 or something like that. Again, I apologize. I can't get the audio and I didn't record the flight. So that's my best recollection of what he said. And so now I look on the traffic display again, and sure enough, there's the airplane who was coming at me, more or less head on, but still a few miles away on the instrument approach. And I said, okay, I'll turn to the right and now head off to the west and get out of that guy's way. And I started to climb. So, in my opinion, there was never a collision threat. And I did my due diligence as pilot to avoid a collision threat with the first guy, and then once again with the second guy who was on the instrument approach.
So here you can see all three of us have exited the class Delta and are going about our business. 2 Delta Mike has climbed up above the cloud layer a little bit to my right, and 9 Zulu Whiskey is doing the maneuvers up ahead and to my left. Meanwhile, here comes the aircraft that's inbound on the instrument approach, and in just a moment here you'll see that aircraft make a right turn when ATC vectors him out of my way, and ultimately that aircraft just makes a big turn, rejoins the localizer, and flies their approach. It's really important for both pilots and air traffic controllers to remember that the final approach course to runway 32 at Craig is mostly in Class E airspace, where no two-way communication with ATC is required at all. There's also just lots of traffic in this general area. Student pilots from not only our airport but other airports, soon to be potentially lots of sport pilots, transient pilots that are instrument rated or not from other airports. So I think it's just really important for both pilots and ATC to manage their expectations as to what pilots will be doing when they are in the vicinity of an instrument approach corridor.
You know, at the time, I kind of felt bad because I'm like, dang it, I'm the one who's telling everybody to stay off of the localizer, and here I am getting yelled at by a controller for being too close to the localizer, right? But at the same time, I'm like, no, Meredith, you really didn't have any choice there. I mean, I guess there could have been other options, like maybe climb and head, hook a hard left turn more to the east to get away from the airplane that turned out to be 739 Zulu Whiskey. Maybe I could have climbed a bit higher earlier, knowing that I was by the localizer. But these are all judgment calls in the heat of the moment. And my point is that the airplane who was on the instrument approach, or the practice instrument approach, was talking to Jack's approach. The controller presumably saw me the entire time. Now, he may have attempted to contact me on 124.9 a bit earlier prior to me switching over. I just don't know. But in my view, I did my due diligence by getting on the correct frequency to monitor Jack's approach at the appropriate time. He was able to reach me, but he could have simply said 99725, if you're on frequency, make an immediate right turn for traffic. And I would have done that. He didn't need to yell at me. He didn't need to, berate me for something I already knew. Can you imagine if I was a student pilot, how I would have felt? I would have been freaking out. Now, I wasn't freaking out because I'm a professional and I was aware of the situation. I was a bit annoyed and kind of, again, annoyed at myself for in some way having caused the situation to occur. And I apologized to the controller. And please, whoever was flying the other airplane on the instrument approach yesterday, please accept my apology for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I hope you saw me as I was approaching also, because you were in VMC, because I saw you. And hopefully you saw me too. And there was no big problem. And looking at the ADSB exchange data, it appears that that other aircraft was able to simply make a right turn, rejoin the localizer, and shoot their approach, and everything worked out fine. But this is just a reminder to controllers to please avoid, as best as you can, berating and yelling and screaming at people. It doesn't help anything, okay? It certainly elevated my blood pressure a little bit just because of the tension that was clearly on the frequency from the controller. I knew what was going on, and I wasn't about to hit that guy, trust me. But what you said didn't help the situation. All it did was get me upset a little bit. It kind of increased my stress level and didn't fix anything. All right, so please, everybody, calm down. My advice to myself is next time, yes, I probably could have done a little better job of planning the departure and reminding myself as I was tracking southbound to stay east to the best of my ability. Yes, that is something I will work harder on in the future. My priority was not getting into a collision with the people that I saw out the window ahead of me and on my traffic screen. So I was doing the best that I could do.